It's often necessary that if we want to achieve great things, we have to face the challenges and the obstacles in front of us, including the ones that exist in our minds. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Flow Over Fear podcast, where it is our mission to help you to rise above fear and realize your ultimate potential in leadership and life. I'm your host, Adam Hill, and it is my goal to share with you the human side of high performance. My guests share their experience with fear, anxiety, struggle, challenge, and most importantly, despite all of it, how they rose above it to achieve incredible results. So, if you're ready to rise up, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Flow Over Fear. And today I want to ask you a question. Have you ever given up on a dream or a big goal because it sparks a sense of fear in you, or self-doubt, or somebody tells you that you're being ridiculous and suddenly you feel embarrassed and you just want to give up on the dream altogether and bury your head in shame? Well, you're not alone. And today I want to share with you a few things, a few of our biggest obstacles to achievement, to our progress. And these are things that get in the way, but they don't really have to, even though they're really challenging. And even though they present themselves as obstacles, I want to convey to you that what I'm about to share with you today is often necessary for us to make those big leaps to the next level. It's often necessary that if we want to achieve great things, we have to face the challenges and the obstacles in front of us, including the ones that exist in our minds or that somebody else tells us. We know that our dreams or our goals will be big enough if they cause other people or ourselves to say, yeah, maybe not. You know, one example of this came to me many, many years ago. And this was before I really got into the idea of personal development and improving myself. And it was just this sense of, I was recently married to my wife. We had recently moved down to Irvine, California, and we wanted to kind of get out and explore and enjoy some adventure, because I didn't realize it at the time, but that was one of my core values. That was one of the things that lit me up, was adventure. And I'd never ridden a mountain bike before, or really got out into any trails or done any hiking or anything like that. But that always intrigued me, that I wanted to get onto a mountain bike and explore, trails and things like that. And so my wife and I, not making very much money at the time, we were still new to our careers, and we were still kind of scraping by. We wanted to get some mountain bikes and explore. So we went to the local sports chalet, where we found two of the cheaper aluminum mountain bikes that you can find at a sports chalet, which is, by the way, a store that doesn't exist anymore. But at the time, if you could think of like a Dick's Sporting Goods or something like that, that's kind of what that was. And these bikes were, they were cheap. You could see the weld marks that came on it. You could tell that they were mass produced. And that's okay. I mean, we were just starting out. We just wanted something where we can explore. It wasn't something we had done before. So we bought the bikes, we bought the matching helmet and all the matching accessories to make sure that we were safe and all this good stuff. And we took ourselves out on one of the easier trails in Aliso Creek, somewhere in Irvine. And not maybe 5 minutes into the ride, when we're still surrounded by lots of people, this was kind of a busy weekend. We're riding along the trail, and this clearly expert mountain biker comes like riding towards us. And this is probably not how it happened, but this is how I envision it happening. He does this like sliding stop where he slides his back tire towards us, and he kind of looks us up and down. And this part did happen, though, where he looks us up and down, and he says something that I think is kind of nice that he tells us. He says, "Hey, you might want to be careful because there's bees up ahead. There is a swarm of bees that is swirling around, and I don't know, maybe it was like attacking cyclists as they were riding through. Who knows? But and that wasn't uncommon for somewhere like the wilderness of Irvine, California. And so thanked him. I said, well, thanks for the notice. He said, well, you guys look like you don't really know what you're doing here. I mean, and then he was kind of like, have you done this before? Have you ridden up here before? And he started like kind of digging in with a knife. And he looks my bike and my wife's bike up and down, and he starts pointing at things and saying, that's cheapo stuff. Why did you get that on there? What are you doing? I don't think you guys are equipped to ride these trails. And man, I mean, I guess he was right. We weren't equipped to ride the really rough and tumbled trails of Irvine, California. But at the time, as he was like disparaging us for no reason at all, and he probably thought he was being helpful. You know, have you ever run into that where somebody thinks they're being helpful to you, but they're really being wildly insensitive and disparaging? Well, that was one of those instances, and it came at a very sensitive time because it was a time where this was something that was wildly still outside of my comfort zone. And because I had my wife with me, it was something where we could at least tag team the fear and go after it together. And because we were in that place of real sensitivity, of real beginning, of real vulnerability, of saying we're trying this new thing, well, we felt the embarrassment in that moment. We felt the shame. We felt this idea of like, oh, wow, it's like, yikes. Even though I know that guy is an asshole and he's being a total prick right now for no reason. Maybe he's going through something in his own life, but he's really taking it out on just a couple of people trying to have a nice ride on the trails. Even though that's the case, like, you know, it affected us so negatively. And, you know, we basically took those bikes home. We put them in the shed in our little shed that we had in our apartment. And we never brought them out again for another decade. And of course, that ended my story of cycling. I never cycled again. And he was right. I was a terrible cyclist. I should have never done it. Oh, no, that's absolutely wrong because both my wife and I became Ironman triathletes. So anyway, this is a point to demonstrate that a lot of times we can be overwhelmed or affected by external forces that really just impact us in that moment, and they can affect our entire lives and our entire dreams. You know, there was a lot of things that were going on in me at that time, and not a lot of healthy things. But at that time, I made a decision based on somebody I didn't know, somebody who didn't know me, somebody who barely knew the circumstances, who may have been having a bad day himself, and I made a decision based on that to never pick up a bike again for the next, you know, decade, and as did my wife. And so, I mean, it goes to show that there are ways in which we can influence people. And I live with that moment, and it reminds me of how to approach newcomers. These are the kinds of stories that demonstrate or that remind me why I want to do something like this and share these kinds of stories, because I want to make sure that we're overshadowing the cynics, the naysayers, the people that say that you can't do it. And that I'm sharing with you that you can. And that I'm evidence of that all of my guests are evidence of that, and that you too are evidence of that. Whatever you want to achieve, whatever dream that is within you is already in you. All it takes is chipping away at it to make sure that it happens, and not giving in to these little things that seem so big in the moment. Like an asshole cyclist telling you that your equipment's not good enough and that you're a newbie and you shouldn't be out here. Those are the naysayers you don't want to listen to. You want to find the communities that you can. But the three things that I want to share with you today, the three obstacles that get in our way of these progress, that I want to share with you today are things that can have that impact on you in that moment, that can make you take your bike and put it in the shed for 10 years. But there are ways in which you can flip that and make it fuel you and turn it around. So the first thing that I want to share with you out of these three things, the first obstacle I want to share with you is other people. Yes, other people can get in the way of your success. And there's a couple of types of people that can do that. The first is that person I just mentioned. is the random stranger who thinks they know best and thinks that they're serving you in some way, or thinks that they're giving you the best advice because they know better. And these people come at random occasions, and you may not be able to expect them like we did in that experience on the trails. But it can still be, even though we don't know them, it can still be very impactful, because we may think that they know best because they've got the expensive $10,000 equipment, or they have the experience, or what have you. Maybe that happens in some kind of business idea that you're in. Maybe you're wanting to start a business in an industry like heating and air conditioning or something like that. And the company that is already established tells you, give me a break. You can't do that. You're not going to be able to compete with us. Get out of here. That kind of thing. Those things can really affect us. But that's one example of that. But there's also another example of how people can become obstacles, and this one's a little bit more insidious and a little bit more traumatic, because it comes from the people that may love us and that we love. A lot of times, people that love us want the best for us, but a lot of times, with people that we may know, there's a fixed mindset that comes into play where they think that they're looking out for our best interests by saying that maybe we should stop chasing that big goal that might hurt us, that we may fail at, and maybe we should just find something safe. But I'll tell you, from my experience, safe is not always that. And secure, there's this lie of security that we hear that comes from like trying to play the safe route, because ultimately over time we start to look back with regret on what we didn't achieve and what we didn't go after when we wanted to. So even though those people love us, I think one of the important things that we need to do in that moment, when people that love us tell us maybe that we shouldn't pursue this thing, is first look at them with compassion. Look at them with love, and say, and recognize where that feedback is coming from, that it's coming from a place of love, even though it's hurtful. And then maybe just be honest about that I understand where you're coming from, but I'm going to pursue this anyway. And then another option for both those individuals. I mean, the first individual, if you're able to, you can just ignore them. But if you're not able to, and this is true with people that love you too, the way to get past that, or way to overcome that, is to get curious. And instead of, the first thing we're going to feel is very emotional about it. These people are hurting our feelings. They're making us feel embarrassed. They're making us feel shame. But if we can rise above that in the moment, take a deep breath, and then get curious. Well, what would you suggest? How do you expect me to do that? How do you expect me to change? How would you expect me to get started in this? How do you think, or things like that, if they love you? Do you think that'll continue to make me happy? Or what? And even if you don't ask them the question, get curious within yourself. Well, is what they're saying, and this is the most important question, is that true? Is that really true? If they're saying, yeah, it's not worthwhile because you'll probably fail and it's not going to be, is that true? Look deep in your heart and ask yourself, is it true? Look at all of the people who have achieved amazing things in their lives and ask, is it true for them? Ask if they would go back in a heartbeat and change their life into something secure or something safe. Ask if they wouldn't have made that decision. Even the people who may not have achieved the level of success that they'd hoped for, but they went after something that they were passionate about. Ask them if they would go back in a heartbeat and go back to change their lives. I have yet to hear from somebody who has gone in a direction that they feel impassioned about and that they feel regret. I have yet to hear that. So the way to get past the other people part of it, when other people are making you feel shame or embarrassment or guilt or what have you, is to get curious. Get curious about it. Ask yourself, is that true? And then the second part, the second obstacle to achievement and progress is inside. It's our own brains. So just like we have other people that are our enemies when it comes to trying to achieve great things because they can't conceptualize that achievement, we have that same problem. Our brains have a point of reference that is right now. And when we don't have a point of reference for what we've yet achieved, like we don't have a point of reference for achieving that big dream that we have, it sparks fear in us. Because it's telling us, I mean, our own brains are telling us the very things that the people who love us tell us. And it's because our brain loves us. Our brain wants what's best for us. And so in that instance, it sparks fear and it says, hey, whoa, hold on. Don't do that. There's danger there. There's danger in that approach to building that business or going after that fitness pursuit or going after that relationship or whatever it may be. That's the fear that comes in because of what our brains are telling us. And instead of looking at that as something like your brain is telling you that there's legitimate danger, again, it's a great idea to get curious on this. And this is something where you want to look at and also ask, is that true? But you want to also ask is, okay, what is the nature of this fear? Is this fear really signaling that there's danger? Or is this fear signaling that I have an opportunity to achieve something great? Now, when we experience danger, legitimate danger, like we see a bear, I don't know why the example is always a bear. Why is it always a bear? Bears get a bad rap a lot of times, but let's just, for the sake of this, well, let's say a shark. Let's say a shark that can walk on land, that walks in the city streets. You see it right in front of you. Okay, there's this shark. Well, that's legitimate danger, especially if you're seeing it on the streets of San Francisco. That's just kind of scary. So legitimate danger telling you that you should probably avoid it. Yeah, that's great. But oftentimes, more often than not, for those of us living in the first world now, most of us don't experience, or most of us, the reason we experience fear is not because of that legitimate danger. It's because of the second reason fear exists. And that is as a signal that we have an opportunity to grow, that we have an opportunity to become more, we have an opportunity to find greatness. Have you ever noticed when that happens? And so the way that you know that happens, and this is where curiosity helps, is the way when you know that happens is when excitement rises up with it. So you have this perfect combination of excitement and fear rising up in you where it's like, oh, that's exciting. Oh, that's scary. And that is what I call the oh shit factor. Because when you experience it, you think to yourself, oh shit. And so that's kind of your eureka or your epiphany moment. It's scary and exciting at the same time. And so that's kind of that curiosity that's telling you when your brain is telling you, no, 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 don't forget, really look inside and see if your heart is saying yes, yes, yes. And then maybe you can pursue that thing. So that's really the way your brain can get in the way, and the way you can overcome that, again, with curiosity and recognizing. A lot of this is recognizing that when we're chasing big dreams or big opportunities, our goal is not to be absent of fear or absent of obstacles or absent of the challenge. We're not going to be absent of it. We're going to have plenty of it. Our goal is to look at it, question it, get curious about it, and then rise above it and keep going anyway, despite that fear, despite whatever embarrassment you feel, despite the shame. And recognize those are just feelings that come with the process, and that's okay. Because eventually, once you've succeeded and you have that point of reference to look back on, you've entered into this virtuous cycle where you recognize it as part of the process, and you can continue to increase the velocity of that virtuous cycle as you continue to embrace the fear and rise above it. And then finally, the third thing that gets in the way of our progress, and this is despite other people and what happens in our own brain, is a lack of discipline. It's a lack of ability to stay consistent. And a lot of this happens when we do start listening to what our brains tells us, or what other people tell us. And maybe we feel ashamed or we feel frustrated, or we feel stuck, or we feel burned out. And so we stop pursuing it altogether for a while and maybe pick it up later. We pick it up some days. We just stop that consistency. And that derails us from the momentum that we build. Discipline is really all about momentum. And if you've ever tried to push a car, like a car that won't start, a car that's in neutral, right? If you've ever, the first push is massively difficult because you're pushing this 2-ton vehicle. But the second that you get it pushed, it becomes a lot easier, right? I mean, because you have that momentum. But if you keep stopping and starting and keep stopping and starting, you're continuing to have to exert a lot more energy to get that car moving. That's why consistency is so, so important. Discipline is so, so important to keep it going. And there's one of the things we run into, and one of the reasons we have problem with staying disciplined, is because we buy into this belief that when we pursue something that we love or pursue a passion, we have to give it everything we've got, 110% all the time. That's the recipe for disaster. People, those messages of like give 110%, or no pain, no gain, or go big or go home, or stay hard. Those things fool us into giving 110% and ultimately lead us down a path of lack of consistency. And then what happens? You feel this shame, or you feel this embarrassment, or you feel this you feel this frustration that you can't achieve what those very people that are telling you that can achieve. I mean, I love stories of inspirational people who have given 110% and have reached, this true pinnacle. They're great. But when they're telling you to give your all the time, they're setting you up for failure. What we need to do instead, consistency trumps that like 110% effort every single time. So the goal shouldn't be 110%. It should be 80%. 80% consistently beats 110%, 100% of the time. That's where we go. That's how we stay consistent, is we leave some of the energy in reserves, so that when we're giving, our effort, we can actually say, okay, that's enough for today. Or we could say, oh, you know what, that effort is a little too hard. I need to back off, because that's where the improvement comes from, is that 80%. Giving it 80% consistently is going to lead to tremendous results over time, because it is an act of consistency. I'll say that with my journey in Ironman, when I first started Ironman, I had absolutely no clue what I was doing. But the one thing that I latched onto early on was this idea of the Maffetone method. And the Maffetone method basically tells you that you should always train at about 80% of your maximum heart rate. He uses this formula: 180 minus your age gives you your maximum aerobic heart rate. And that comes out to about 80% of your maximum, your maximum heart rate. And training at that level is ridiculously slow. It's ridiculously easy. I started out training at like 13 or 14 minute miles when I was running, like barely being able to stay up on the bike because I was going so slow. But the amazing thing is that over time, with consistency, when I was doing it every single day, day in and day out, over the course of months, I got much faster under that same heart rate. I became much more effective, so that eventually over time, my 80% became everyone else's 110%. That's what you need to shoot for. With consistency over time, your 80% will be everybody else's 110%. And then whatever they say on the bike trail, whatever they say in the boardroom, whatever they say in the business that you're in, won't matter, because you'll have put in the work, the necessary energy consistently to prove to yourself and to prove to everyone else that you deserve what you've achieved and that you have achieved it. And that's in you. It's in you. All of that achievement, all of every one of your big dreams, that is within you. So go out and chase that big dream, and recognize that those obstacles don't have to be the end of your dreams. They're fuel for it. Let it fuel you. Let it bring you to your next level and chase that dream at 80% consistency, at 80% consistently. Thank you for joining me today, and we'll see you next time. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to the Flow Over Fear podcast. If you'd like to learn more about getting into flow and learn the foundations of flow, I have a free video series on my website at www.adamcliffordhill.com called The Foundations of Flow. Feel free to go there and download it and start your journey to rising above fear and achieving greater flow in your life. And if you like this episode, and I'm guessing you did if you stuck around for this long, then please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, and you will receive notifications when I have new interviews, new recaps, and new trainings that pop up on YouTube. Thanks again for joining us.